Food and weight obsession can be exhausting. Losing weight, gaining weight, dieting, feeling like a failure because you missed a workout, binged, overate, or gained all the weight back. The cycle is endless and it can be maddening. But I'm here to say you can stop the mental madness. You can take back control of your food behaviors, but you have to face your fears, you have to ask for help, and make a change. I am Leslie M. Thornton, permanent weight loss coach from hpwl.co. This is Hypnosis for Permanent Weight Loss, and I know you can make this happen. On this podcast, you will hear how to stop the mental madness, love your body, trust your food decisions so you can create a life of happiness, freedom, and inner peace. Hello, Leslie M. Thornton, Hypnosis for Permanent Weight Loss, coming to you live today if you're with us on Facebook, or hello if you're listening later on the podcast with Dr. Tarryn MacCarthy. So excited to have you here. Thanks for being here.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, Leslie, for having me on.
Absolutely. Dr. Tarryn MacCarthy and I met just a couple weeks ago through the dental community and found we had a lot in common. So excited to bring this conversation to you all today. Before we get into that, though, I just want to properly introduce Dr. MacCarthy. So she is the happiness and transformational mindset coach to doctors and dentists. As a motivational speaker and host of the Business of Happiness podcast, she is passionate about empowering women who have dedicated their lives to serving everyone else to fully fueling their own happiness. Through her life-changing Radical Happiness for Practitioners program, she has helped dozens of entrepreneurial women flourish with greater financial success, freedom of time, decreased stress and anxiety, and more rewarding relationships in their lives.
Yes.
She believes that within each of us lies the power to heal, grow, and ascend to greater happiness and abundance, and that when you feel good, you can do good.
Oh,
And
yes.
anyone who's been a Hypnosis for Permanent Weight Loss podcast listener for a long time knows that you're on the right podcast. So these are all the topics we talk about and care about. So thank you for bringing that
So
work into
amazing.
the world.
Yes. And thank you for bringing this work into the world, because I've been listening to a couple of your episodes and it's so amazing what you're supporting your audience with. So thank you, Leslie.
Thank you. And I would love to hear, my commitment to my audience is that I just continue to bring soul expanding, mind expanding conversations into their lives. For myself and for so many of my listeners, my gateway into understanding my subconscious mind and the fact that I was the creator of my own life and reality was through my challenges with food, body, and weight. And so just love hearing other leaders' stories and how, they got started doing what they're doing. And maybe your, consciousness awakenings as well, just to inspire other people. So would love to start out by hearing your story and how this all got started.
Thank you for asking. Yeah, and I do. I love hearing your story. I've been so inspired by it because I think that so many of us women can relate to that challenge with food, body, and weight. For me, my consciousness awakening really happened around achievement and, being the hardest working person in the room, identifying as being the hardest working person in the room, being achievement oriented my whole life. Here I am in dentistry. Anyone who's in the healthcare professions was recognized when they were really young, or was given love and attention and reward for academic achievement. So it was one of those things that just came easily to me, and the downside about achievement is it never ends. It never ends. There's never good enough. There's never, better enough. And the do more mentality. So I talk a lot about the do more mentality is when we do come across challenges like body weight or financial challenges or relationship challenges or business challenges or parenting challenges, our go-to perspective is, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? How do I do this better? How do I do this into greater success? And that do more mentality ended me up in a place of complete breakdown. And what that looked like for me was eventually became this successful dentist with all the societally, acceptable paradigms of success. What everybody else would look at from the outside as being successful, the fancy house, the fancy car, the fancy, I joke around, I had the fancy dogs. But you know what I mean when you get
I
the
do.
fancy dogs,
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. I
you
may
know,
have one myself that
there you
I
go.
look at myself and I'm like, I have a fancy dog. How did that happen?
Exactly. When you get the fancy dog, you've reached a certain level of success. Anyway, from the outside, it looked like I had all the things. And I was so miserable, very unhappy. And that was also shadowed by an enormous amount of guilt and shame, because here I was sitting in the lap of luxury, having achieved all this financial success, having achieved all this business success, and had the family, had everything around me, and I couldn't find happiness, and really felt, what's wrong with me that I can't feel happiness in this moment? I just felt like I'd created this hamster wheel that I couldn't get off of. And I came to this crisis point that I likened to a midlife crisis, although at the time I was in my 30s, where I thought, I just want to leave everything behind. I just want to throw it all away. I just want to move to Africa and live on a piece of land, with nothing and no responsibilities. And looking back now, I was in a place of extreme stress, overload, sympathetic nervous system storm, and fight or flight. And so what I did at the time was what my body knew best, which was flee. And I did. I ran away from everything. I sold my practice. I sold my house. I went to a bankruptcy attorney. I fled the state. I went to a divorce attorney. If I could have, Leslie, at the time, I think I would have left my children if I could, because I was just in such a place of fear and anxiety and shame. And that was the beginning of me rediscovering myself, because the one person I couldn't run away from was me. And what happened next were 15 years of unlearning all the coping mechanisms and rediscovering why I did what I did. And interestingly, at the time, I was pregnant with my third baby. And my first two pregnancies, my first two babies came supremely early, good 2 months early, because my body was just being washed in cortisol. My body couldn't hold on to the pregnancy long enough. So for my third, I thought, I'm going to do this differently. And I actually took a hypnobirthing class and learned how to meditate, learned how to use hypnosis and self-hypnosis. And this little girl came 2 weeks late. My body knew exactly what to do all along. I just needed to get out of my own way. And that was the beginning of my journey of discovering the power I had within me to
Absolutely amazing.
Create my own reality.
Wow, what a powerful story, and just so many different aspects. And I had the vision of like the eat, pray, love scenario where she's just like on her hands and knees in the bathroom and just asking God, like, show me the way. And, and it oftentimes we have to hit our own rock bottom before, we can get that breakthrough. And I'm curious for you, the belief of divine timing, the what I see so much in my work and I talk about all the time is the more successful that a person is, the more, they might have these inner kind of battles going on underneath the surface, unless they've, done a lot of work on themselves, or, gotten into meditation, or had, a situation like this happen. And I know the journey that it can be to build and to create a life like that, and to have the bougie dogs and the house and the family and the every single thing. And so I'm curious for you, like, do you think, looking back now, that was it meant to be that you were able to create up to that point, and the moment when all of that happened for you, do you feel that that was divine timing in that, or do you think there was any point along the way that it could have been any different?
Oh, I think there could have been any number of opportunities to make it different, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the quantum field, there were so many
Of course.
opportunities when I look
Mm-hmm.
back and I think, oh, if I just turned left. I think in order to get the amount of success that I had at a really early age, I needed to really ignore everything,
Mm-hmm.
including my own intuitive knowing, including my own needs, including not listening to the whispers of my body, of my mind, of my heart, and really focusing very narrowly on a single outcome, which for me was orthodontist owning an orthodontic practice with a family. Like I had a very clear idea. And in doing so, I was even ignoring my own definition of success. I had looked at something outside of me saying, oh, that looks successful and they must be. So that's where I'm going because success to me equated happiness. And never for a moment realized that I was actually denying myself a deeper understanding of myself and ignoring what success would look like to me, even
Mm-hmm.
happiness, because it's a different definition for every single one of us, and I believe a different definition at different seasons in our lives. So when I was having this very narrow focus and kind of putting these blinders on to messages coming from inside of me, messages coming from the universe, I was definitely ignoring all the opportunities where I had to make a left turn or to see a different lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And do I think it had to happen that way? I don't know. But I heard a really good interview the other day of Jane Fonda, who's now, I think, 86 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And she said something so beautiful that in her rediscovering herself, she had to strip away all the knowing that she had gained during her lifetime and return to that very youthful self and meet herself all over again. Meet herself at an age before she had taken on all of society's definitions and regulations and expectations and all the other people in her world, and really rediscover that young girl and find the magic in her. And I think that rings really true. I don't know that you necessarily need to um, I'm hopeful that not everybody has to reach rock bottom. I am hopeful that
Mm-hmm.
not everybody has to get to that place of complete burnout, hovering over the kitchen sink. Or for me, I was squatting over the kitchen trash can because at the time I had used alcohol as an escape. And I think that's another thing. What do I need to do to feel better? For me, the only thing I knew was chemical changes in my body. So I don't know about that. It's a really interesting question, Leslie. I think
Yeah.
that there are multiple. How do you feel about that with yourself and your life? Do you think that?
Yeah, I kind of think about, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. Because I know sometimes like I could look back and there'll be certain times when someone might say something that would kind of have me look a different direction, but just I was just completely closed off, and feels like that was still the direction that for whatever reason, like it was like I had to take. With that said, for me, all of my training and continue to develop myself, and I'm sure yourself too, in marketing and sales and doing a podcast to share these stories that could have someone's awakening come faster and,
Mm,
have people not have to hit that rock bottom. It's like, that can be divine in and of itself, someone says. And that's why I love having different stories being told, because, different things are going to spark for different people that has them really pay attention. And I do believe that there is a divine, like when,
mm,
same thing, like you could be the teacher for someone right now listening, who's just like, for whatever reason that resonates and it turns them on. They're like, maybe I need to go, a different direction. Um, but I kind of, and also believe that like, if nothing actually causes us to pivot, then maybe it's because we're not meant to yet. And
not ready.
maybe, yeah. And
Yeah,
maybe
that's
it's
really
all
interesting.
perfect timing.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Versus I have a lot of clients who will come and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I wish I knew about this program and this whole
Mhm.
different way of getting past the obsession, so much younger. Um, but I do kind of encourage that mindset of like, consider the fact that everything that you've done up until now, you needed to do to be ready for this. And maybe you wouldn't have been able to receive this information the same way if you didn't get to that point. And
Yeah.
all of that kind of stuff.
Oh,
So,
I definitely agree with that. And I think there's also
mhm.
great strength in reflecting back and seeing that every point led you up to this moment now. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Instead of self judgment of why took you that long. I think that doesn't serve us ever. I think that
Correct.
laying extra guilt or self judgment on ourselves doesn't help us to make that transformation.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that you're really right. I think maybe it's not that we all have to reach rock bottom, but maybe that inspiration can draw you stronger than maybe the pain of really hitting the lowest low. And so I think that, that's a really beautiful way of looking at it as well, is that especially in community, we get to support one another in that way, and that for me really is one of my visions, at least in the medical and dental world. And I think women are so poised to be able to do this for one another, to support one another, to inspire one another, and to be there as a way to uplift, as opposed to competition or pushing other people down. But I think that when there's somebody, as you mentioned, when the teacher will arrive when the student is ready, when there is that moment of inspiration and that moment of recognition, oh, that's just like me. That's somebody who I can understand and learn from and be inspired by. I think that's another great point for turning it around.
I love that. And when was the moment when you found hypnobirth and meditation? I would love to know that.
Yeah, it really was after I literally ran away from everything and
Mhm.
fled the state. Um, I wasn't successful in leaving my children. I wasn't successful in leaving my husband. And I actually wasn't successful in leaving dentistry either, because at the end of all of this, here I am sitting in front of you with the same beautiful husband, same kids, different dogs, but
Uh-huh.
same career, and then once I was able to meet myself and understand myself, then I started falling in love with everything around me and finding the happiness in everything around me, which was phenomenal. But I do think that the moment was after I fled everything and realized I really needed to listen to my body. So that was really my first intuitive hit, that I'd neglected my body for so long. And here I had this baby growing inside of me. So really, she was my inspiration. And I knew I wanted to do this differently.
Mhm.
And that's where hypnobirthing, actually, what had happened, my first two babies, when they were delivered, they were tiny, tiny, so immature in their development, and they were so tiny. But both of them were born with enormous bruises on their heads because from the epidural, I couldn't feel anything below my nipples. So I just did what I always had done, which was push myself so hard.
Mhm.
And it really was a metaphor for my life, but I was doing it physically as well. I'm the one person who will throw her hip out in yoga because I got to be the best at it.
Mhm.
And that really was true for me for a long time. So I knew I wanted to do this and feel my body, which is why I went to hypnobirthing, because I thought I'm not going to do this without medication, because I want to have this delivery without injuring my baby. And that was really, I guess you could say, divine timing, because the meditation immediately changed my life. And from that moment, I've never left that practice. And my daughter's almost 12 years old. And I think that single-handedly was the turnaround for me, was learning a practice to slow down the noise, to slow myself down, and to learn to be quiet with myself. That changed my life.
Mm. Yes, 100%. I can totally relate. So yeah, I hit my own personal rock bottom with the food, body, and weight stuff. I just got to a place where I was not happy physically. I felt crappy. I, had digestive issues going on, but I knew I couldn't do another diet again. And I kind of threw my hands up in the air, though, of just like, well, I'm either going to be fat and happy forever. I'm going to have to figure this out for good. Like, how come some people, you don't have to struggle with this and I do? And I feel like, what we're both sharing, and even in the Eat, Pray, Love, share, it's like the surrender has to come first. I also follow, her name is Dr. Kim Duramo, and she cured herself from, her.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Cured herself from a autoimmune disease, and
Yeah.
she was sharing that she had to completely surrender. She had read all the books. She knew all of the science behind healing yourself and doing all the things, but it wasn't until she literally threw her hands in the air and let life kind of breathe through her
Yes.
that the healing was able to happen. And it was just a few months later after I did that, I was just, walking down the street in San Francisco and stumbled upon hypnosis, and, was very skeptical and no reason to find, but, tried it on, and, completely woke up the next day feeling free, and then it just became the fascination with the power of the unconscious mind, which I love that we share that passion. And just naturally just wanting to share with the world, what's possible when you do slow down and you are able to listen to yourself. And yeah, so how did you rebuild your life
Yeah.
from there? What did it look like?
Well, I'd love to just, from what you were just
Sure.
saying, I think there's such a beautiful nugget there about the surrender component and how that can be such a challenge when your whole life you've been living in control
Hmm.
or in control mode. And I think that was definitely true for me. And learning the enormous power of surrender and how control itself is so limiting. And, I think many of us talking about the subconscious mind, many of us who find ourselves in a position of needing to exert control, so often hyper independence or micromanaging or achievement, or trying to control the outcome constantly, or maybe your audience might be recognize in themselves like frustration in other people, like people just not doing or feeling like a victim of the events outside of yourself. I know that definitely rang true for me. And that limitation, that the expectation that we can control anything, because
Hmm.
really that is the fallacy, right? That there's any control. And I know when it comes to body for me as well, that was a big issue in terms of how do I control my weight? How do I control my body, my body's aging, my body's functioning, my sleep? And once again, when we give way to that surrender, that's when the answers start to come, which takes a lot of courage to let go when your whole life you've been living in that mindset of trying to control.
Love that. So
Yeah.
powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for a lot of my clients, it's like the buildup. They don't realize like the amount of just emotionality underneath the
Oh,
surface of as part
huge.
of the surrender. Right. And I have a lot of clients that are fearful of crying or actually emoting, and because there's this association, which I can relate to, that if they do that, then they're going to fall into a deep, dark depression. They're never going to
Yes.
be able to come out of it. They're not going to be able to show up to work. Right. And
Yes.
their survival is on the line. In reality, it's like I tell my clients all the time, I'm just like, we're no different than like babies, where you see a baby and they'll just start crying. And then 2 seconds later, you make a funny face at them and they're laughing and happy again. It's like, why
Yes.
do we think that we're different? It's like emotions are energy in motion, right? And it's natural that they want and need to move through us somehow. But when we're in that state of constant control, then we're not able to move it. But they have to go somewhere. So we find a release in things like alcohol or smoking
Yes.
or eating. There's some kind of vice. But, when we say surrender, when sometimes we get to that point, if you've been doing it for so long, where it's like, the flight or fight kind of reaction is going to be really severe. But if we make it part of our day-to-day practice to just kind of feel in and allow emotion to come through and pass through or whatever on a regular basis, then the surrender can happen daily.
Absolutely. And I love what you're talking about with sadness and fear. I also find it with my clients with anger, that
Yes.
resistance to feeling the emotion of anger because I'm going to get stuck there or I'm going to become an angry person.
Yeah.
And there's nothing more freeing than allowing that. You know, my favorite practice is a medicine ball and just slamming. And often my anger ends up in tears, right? That
Hmm.
release of emotion. And then I'm fine, and then I
Correct.
can go and be so present with my family. You know, those triggers and activators during the day are never going to stop, and they're going to, no matter how much we work on our personal development and understand our subconscious triggers, there'll always be more. You know, I love this. A friend of mine says we're oniony. You know, you keep peeling
Mm-hmm.
back the layers of the onion and then you keep finding more and more. But knowing that there's enormous power in surrendering to those emotions and then walking through them to the other side. You know, Dante, it was Dante's Inferno. He really knew what he was talking about. We have to be willing to go into those emotions, and the freedom is on the other side. We don't get stuck there.
100%. I had a coach
Oh,
who said whenever they get triggered, how they say to themselves, like, how can I feel this as fast and as hard as possible
ooh, I
to
love
get to
that,
the other
Leslie.
side?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let me
Mm-hmm.
just allow for this emotion right now. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's so cool that we're talking about this because I think in personal development and spiritual and emotional development, we get to a place where we just want to live in the high level, feel good space with a
Mm-hmm.
greater perspective, that 5D space when you know what that feels like. You just want to stay there forever. And yet it's our emotions, our humanness. That's such a gift to deeper insight for us. If we lived in those beautiful, all knowing places all the time, we wouldn't have the gift that our bodies and our human form, our human emotions, our human meat suit is giving us. And really, there's beauty in that too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's a place that I've seen that a lot of coaches miss, for their clients is just the acknowledgement of those hard and painful emotions. And, you know, n- it can be easy to watch other people who seem like they're there all the time. And,
Yeah.
maybe some people, maybe it's a place I haven't mastered yet. But
Right.
I also feel like the more engaged I am in life, like I'm always going to be challenging and evolving and wanting to keep sharing this. It's like there's going to be more opportunities for more things to trigger more
Yeah.
emotions, that's necessary for myself to evolve to the next level, to be the next level of conscious leader that I need to be to keep sharing the mission, etc. So yeah, I just think it's such an important aspect to make sure people touch on and also have the support and tools to feel safe to feel.
Yes. And that's such a key part, right? Having an environment where you can feel safe to feel. That's such an
Mhm.
important thing. You know,
Mhm.
I'm interested, Leslie, what, because you are so consciously evolved and you have such clarity, what are you challenged with now in your own life in terms of your personal development?
Yeah. Well, just yesterday, I was in the state of surrender. I was literally in my guest room and had a big, huge yell out to God and say, I can't do it anymore. You know what I mean? But today I've felt better than I've felt in a long time. And um, for me, it's been the financial breakthroughs. My audience has
Mm.
heard me talking around that. So I've mastered getting emotional and mental freedom around food, body, and weight. And probably I mean, it depends on, I mean, you could say a lifetime it's been of that challenge, but really focused on working on that probably the last 2 years or so, year and a half of the same process that I did with food, body, and weight, wanting that same mental and emotional freedom
With money.
financially. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah. How
where are
about
you
yourself?
now in that journey? Are you beginning to see the other side?
I am. Well, I don't want to like feel, whatever. Every time that I feel like I am, then sometimes it's like, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh, wait, maybe not.
There's deeper
um,
learning.
Yeah, and I'm curious around it because, the level of investment that I make in myself and in the business keeps getting higher and higher, and
Mm,
the learnings that I'm getting of, how to manage finances and payrolls and teams and,
yeah.
utilizing debt to, grow the business and face those fears because of all of the, family beliefs that you acquire on debt is bad and
Yeah, yeah.
all of these different types of things. But really, yeah. So as far as where I'm at, I would say much better. The way that I talk about with my clients is like, we want to close the gap for how long we are panicked or upset or fearful around decisions we made or mistakes we might have
Mhm.
made. And like not getting perfectionistic around like the fact that it's going to be like utopia one day. I would say I have no drama around my food, body, and weight decisions anymore. And I just love that that's the reality.
Mm,
It's just like amazing. So I know it's possible with money. So I'd say in the last 6 months or so of really focused attention on this, almost a year, I'm definitely closing that gap between, having the numbers or looking at the accounts and having it trigger me or making a financial mistake that seems like it was terrible. Like,
yeah.
just really not as painful of a situation for me anymore. It's closing the gap for that.
It's so cool.
Um,
It's
yeah.
what's really cool is once you know the practices, and I hate this word tools because I don't believe any of
Yeah.
us are broken, but once you
Nice.
know those practices, then you really can apply it to any aspect of your life, which is so
hmm
empowering
And
too.
it can be really beautiful and really spiritual. Like I tell my clients, like every trigger that happens, it's an opportunity to heal like some part of us from the past in that story. So I had a client the other day who, she stepped on the scale at her doctor's office and she hadn't seen the number in a long time. So that started thinking that her doctor started bringing in some, kind of cautionary, things to her about her weight and recommended she gets this whatever injection for weight loss. And
Oh,
so lots and lots of thoughts happening. But then, learning how to actually dissipate that stuff and, move through it faster and faster
yeah.
being kind of the way out there.
So this is where
Mhm.
my work comes in, is working with those doctors and dentists, so the people who are taking care
Mm,
of us, because
mm,
even as practitioners, we're activated by our patients. And that
mm,
influences recommendations, the way we show up for them, the way we support them. And I dream of a world where our healthcare providers knew how to take radical personal responsibility for their own emotional and spiritual well
mm,
being so that they can take better care of us. Because doctors and dentists are dropping like flies from exhaustion and burnout. And the ones who are pushing through and bypassing all that pain and those emotions and not feeling their feelings are the ones that are treating us. The
yeah.
ones that are pushing through and bypassing the burnout are the ones that are taking care of us. And sometimes I see that we're staying sick because our healthcare providers are sick. And it really is a vicious cycle. So, my dream is to bring to the healthcare community these same beautiful insights that you're sharing with your community so that they can take better care of us, so that they can be there for us in a more profound, creative, compassionate way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Makes me feel even more just gravitating towards, that mission. When I was one of the reasons I left nursing, there's, some times that stand out. But just being in the hospital and seeing one of the surgeons walk down the hall and aggravated because there was a patient who was on dialysis. And, he said, he was like, well, if you would just stop eating that stuff and if you would just stop drinking that, whatever. And for me, as someone who struggled with that, it's just like they can't stop,
Yep.
like they
There's such a
literally can't.
disconnect in
Mhm.
modern medicine in terms of the
Mhm.
mind body connection.
Yeah. And it was
That's
just
so
for
true.
me, like, I have to get out there and educate people about the fact that this, exists. And it's not as easy as just decreasing calories and increasing exercise for certain people. There's a whole emotional and whatever world. I interviewed a gastric bypass surgeon on this podcast in the
Ooh.
past. If anyone hasn't listened, you can check it out. I can't remember, maybe 100 episodes in or so, or 150. And she had done a bunch of surgeries and then found that her patients were gaining the weight back and having a lot of issues. And so she created a program, which she endorsed my program, that was very similar and mandates that before she gives any patient gastric bypass, they need to do this work. And it's boundary setting and communication issues with family and learning how to deal with emotions and everything like this. Because if we don't do that, I remember watching after, it was like, one of the gastric bypass, My 600-Pound Life or something like that, and the woman is post surgery and she's standing in front of the fridge with a block of cheese and eating it, and she was like, the doctor could fix my body but he couldn't fix my mind.
Yeah.
And it's just, and a lot of my clients have had gastric bypass or lap band, and they said, it worked for a while, but I found loopholes. I found ways to eat, and I took care of patients post those surgeries, and I saw, them not always go well at all. And it's like, wow, you just went through this major. I commend people who have done that. If anyone's listening who has done that, like, I don't, I think that everybody's journey is perfect for them. And I always say, like, just shows how committed you are to finding an answer and to
Yes.
never giving up. And we can also trust your journey as well. But yeah, the more that we can educate people on, what actually is going on with the weight issues, hopefully the better we can care for patients and just do better in general in the US with healthcare rather than the sick care
Oh,
situation that we get to
so
be in
beautiful,
now.
Leslie.
Mhm,
So beautiful. Yeah.
mhm, mhm.
So cool.
Amazing.
Aren't we the luckiest, Leslie? We get to do this
uh,
incredible work. I know. I was
oh
saying to
my
my husband
God.
last night, at least from my perspective in dentistry, where I see so many phenomenal dentists literally putting smiles on children's faces every day, but being completely bereft of happiness themselves. And I think, gosh, medicine and dentistry is such an amazing profession if we allowed it to be. If we
Mm,
could get out of our own way, if doctors and dentists had these practices and insights, then man, this is the best profession in the world. I mean, we're literally healing people, we're literally helping people find more health and vitality and to thrive in their lives. I mean, there's no better place to be. But it really does take honoring that power within yourself to be able to recognize that and to be able to be in a place where you can feel worthy of it and you can support your patients with guidance and love and compassion. One of the things I feel strongly about in medicine and dentistry is this burnout epidemic, which really pushes everybody into that fight or flight space. And when your doctor is in a fight or flight space, they're not taking good enough care of you. They just can't. They
mm,
can't access those executive functions and that intelligence and the creative problem solving, let alone compassion to bring you along on the journey or to ask you how you're feeling or to ask you about your past, to
mm.
understand those deeper levels behind the behavior.
Totally. Yeah. And I guess I feel inspired to say to anyone who's listening, it's like, if you have a doctor and every time you leave,
Mm.
that you feel more guilt and more shame and more anxiety around your weight or any other issues, like, it is okay to go and look for a different doctor. They have the best intentions in mind for you. It's nothing bad about, but they may also have their own beliefs and triggers around those areas that, and that's where we get into the vicious cycle, is you are already feeling guilty and upset and scared about your weight and your health, and the way that we know so far how to deal with that is to eat, right? Is the way to
Right.
soothe those emotions. Right. And so everybody gets stuck. I used to myself in that vicious cycle. And it's like, why am I eating? I'm eating, like, I'm anxious because I feel like I'm fat and now I'm eating more. But it's like, And it's not anybody's fault. And, there are doctors, and hopefully there will be more and more that can have more of this awareness and helpful mindset around this, and choosing, helping you make decisions that are really right for you. And um, maybe also have some spiritual awareness of like, okay, this is where you're at, and it's not wrong or bad. And, maybe this is the perfect path that you need. And,
Yeah.
what do you want to do about it? And just really
Yeah.
empower you in making choices that feel good to you, regardless of what that is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
I think the same
Mhm.
I would say to any of your listeners who are doctors or dentists or in the healthcare
Mhm.
professions and feeling shame about not being able to provide that.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with you either.
Correct.
It's just
Agreed.
the system that we have been trained in. And
Mhm.
there really is so much more, and it's so exciting, and it's possible to be a successful doctor or dentist and take care of your patients in a beautiful way and still take care of yourself. In fact,
Mhm.
it's imperative. it's
Mhm.
it's actually how you take better care of your patients is by taking better care of yourself.
100%. Yeah. So the opportunity is, if you notice there's a gap, right? There's any doctors or dentists listening, and you're like, I do that, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, then we just get to take actions to better educate ourselves or
Right.
heal
Yeah.
those things, because then, and that's part of leadership,
Yeah.
anytime that I'm aware of a place that I, am being blocked or whatever to support a client, then it's like, okay, great. This is my next level, right? I had
Yes.
clients in the past who were like, Leslie, I actually want to get certified in hypnosis. Well, that next summer I went and became a trainer of hypnosis and NLP, and now, offer those certifications, which I know that's something we have in common. You're also certified in NLP, and hypnosis, or
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Love that. And how did that come about?
It was looking for answers. So really
Mhm.
the business of happiness, the podcast, my podcast came from that. How do we reach for happiness in business? So that's what the business of happiness came about. How can we be successful in life and happy? So I started interviewing other business owners in all different arenas and who were very successful and happy. So not burnt out or overwhelmed and exhausted and miserable, but actually happy, and trying to understand from them what the difference was. And over and over and over again, the answer that kept coming up was meditation. Interestingly, that was always a common theme of very successful people who were also very happy. And what I soon learned was success doesn't bring happiness. It's actually the other way around, that when we allow ourselves happiness, suddenly success starts flowing our way.
Mhm.
So, in doing so, actually was trained by Tony Robbins Madonna's NLP training, just
Nice.
because I realized that the perspective shift. So, you just gave such a beautiful example of that when you said, when every time I come against a challenge with one of my clients, I look at it as an opportunity for growth. Like, that's such a beautiful perspective shift. And I realized that NLP would help me do that.
Mm.
And NLP made me a better dentist as well, because I had that better insight into perspective and into mindset. And then when I started coaching a lot of my fellow colleagues, we could get so far. We could just get so far with mindset and with using these beautiful perspective shifts and with understanding of human needs psychology and understanding how we worked. But really, the deeper subconscious changes beyond NLP, I really wanted to understand. And
Mm.
that's where the hypnosis came in, and really looking at those subconscious shifts. And so I studied with Marissa Peer, rapid transformational therapy, where it really is allowing your client to lead into where those original beliefs, limiting beliefs, were created.
Mhm.
And in that alpha, theta, brainwave space, allowing them to make those massive shifts in their belief system about themselves. And that's when I started seeing really big change in my clients
Mhm.
and falling in love with it for myself as well. And as you said, every time I come across a new challenge, which similar to your story of calling to God yesterday. I had one last week where I was cried for 3 days. I'm able to, in those moments, recognize that I'm on the precipice of major growth.
Yes.
And even just holding that little hope, that little perspective gives me courage to surrender to it. I knew this feels so deep and so sad and so scary right now that it felt like a moment of depression, I would say, last week. I knew that even on the edge there was going to be some incredible discovery on the other side.
Mhm.
And you reflected it as well, where you said, today I feel great.
Yeah, like
And
in action, Leslie's back.
it's
Yes.
amazing. And I think having that lived experience
Mhm.
is so valuable too, because it gives your brain, your mind, your ego evidence. Okay, this is hard. And on the other side is actually so much light if I allow myself to go there. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And you reminded me also of what I was bringing up earlier with the client and the doctor and the scale and everything when we took her through the NLP tool to go into her body and to actually feel the feelings. And the body is so wise and it brings up a memory, usually from the first
Yes.
0 to 10 years of life, and she remembered, when she was 7 and the family went to McDonald's and she heard her uncle say like she shouldn't have McDonald's specifically about her, and that memory and that energy that never got to come out of her stayed in her body, right? And so once we got to help her reparent that situation, now she's back and she's thinking clearly, and the problem that she had around weight, she was just like, I'm not going to take that weight loss injection, and I know my family loves me and I'm on the right path. And that's what I want for all my clients and all people, is for them to just like feel empowered with their own decisions and be able to, by practicing it. And there's only, there's only one way in my opinion, to get there, is like through that experience of enough times that you feel all those painful emotions and stress is happening and you feel like you want to fight or flight, right? And rather you go in and you say, oh, wow, this is going to be another opportunity to break through and to get to the other side. And what I also, keep for my clients, have them keep in their mind is like what their actual intention for themselves in their lives at this time is, right? I've had clients who have said, I just, for whatever reason, feel so inspired by plus size models and I love the way they carry themselves and I kind of aspire for that. And like, that's huge to be able to declare that, but she never said it. She never actually owned it for herself, but here she is, and her actions are going in alignment with that. But all of her subconscious programming is shaming and guilting everything. Right. So as soon as you clear the emotion and you're present to where it is you're headed without any judgment about where that is for you, it's your authentic truth. No one can take that away from you. Then all you get to do is say, am I in alignment? Am I taking the actions towards the vision? And if so, like, great, I'm on the right track. Keep going.
Yeah.
I also had someone bring to my attention recently around how some human beings are on like an emotional, like they want emotional freedom in every aspect of their lives. Like some souls came here for that. I believe that mine did. Um, and so therefore, then it's like, I'm choosing to go through all of the financial pain, right? I'm taking financial risks. But I know that it's because I want the same level of emotional
Deeper
freedom.
understanding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
so cool.
and
Yeah.
so everything is like, great. It's painful. It hurts. I'm crying again, but I wouldn't have it any other way because I know what's possible on the other side.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the other beauty is that none of it matters.
Yeah.
None of it actually ever
So
matters,
true.
and I think sometimes that can give me enormous strength too, when I realize, oh, none of this matters.
Yeah.
It's all going to be exactly as it should.
Yeah. Did you ever read the book Surrender Experiment?
I
Michael
love
Singer.
it.
Oh my God, it's the
Yes.
best book.
It's so
Well, he
good.
talks about how when he was going through his lawsuit, that
Yes.
you would imagine zooming out and
Yeah.
looking at the planet, and
Yeah.
it's like we are just a ball of rock that's in water going through space at however many miles an hour. And
Yeah.
like, what does it actually mean? Nothing.
Nothing. It actually nothing matters.
Yes, that's right. Empty
Actually
and
nothing
meaningless.
matters.
Yeah.
And at the same time everything does, and I think
Right.
when you were just talking about how you believe you were given this gift of this experience, this life experience, I
Mhm.
couldn't agree more. I think if we lived up millions of miles perspective looking down at the earth, we wouldn't have the gift of experiencing this raw, beautiful humanity, this deep emotion for things that feel so important and feel like they matter so much in the moment. There's a gift to that too.
Mhm.
Being able to live in both worlds, a very evolved spiritual perspective, but also a very human being who has these deep feelings and these fears and these loves and these excitements and these moments of enormous beauty and in moments of enormous pain. They're actually all gifts. And I think what we've done is label them as positive or negative or good
Mhm.
or bad.
That's right.
But really, the richness in all of them is so profound when we allow ourselves to feel it. So, I don't think I'm there yet, Leslie, to be honest with
Mhm.
you, but
Mhm.
I'm close to being on the floor, on my knees, begging for mercy and recognizing the beauty of that moment too. I'm
Mhm.
close. I'm close. In
Mhm.
retrospect, I can see
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
And I know probably so many of your listeners are thinking, yeah, easy for her to say, but I think when we can get to that point, it will allow us to surrender further, surrender deeper, and allow for the deeper
Mhm.
insight beyond.
100%. Yeah. And I think you make a great point. Going back to neurolinguistic programming, it's like our thoughts create our feelings in the body. So if you are looking at any experience, right, obviously in our clientele, it's, sugar is bad and carbs are bad. But as soon as you label something bad, or your relationship is bad, or whatever it is, right, your business is bad, then all of a sudden you have a bad feeling about it, and it just kind of
Mm-hmm.
perpetuates. But if we
Yeah.
take the label off and say, how could this be happening for me, and how is this going to turn into something amazing, and how hard and fast can I feel this feeling so I can become one again with all that is, and see the gifts that the universe is providing for me, as the result of my surrendering over and over again. It's like life just gets fun, it
Yeah.
gets better and better. I mean, doesn't mean it's not painful. I've resisted all the way like any other person, and just the awareness and the education, right? I've had so many mentors and guides and coaches along the way that have shown me, that, and I've walked the walk and done the work and faced the fears, right? That has given me enough experiences to say, yeah, every time,
Mm.
behind every breakdown is a breakthrough. Um, you know, I know all sorts of spiritual, belief is, if we are souls that, decide to enter into this human experience, asking that question of like, if you're given the choice as a soul, like, do you want to go into the body, in the human experience and have this painful and
Yeah.
crazy and try to figure out who you are the entire time and feel, what I mean? Feel all the pain. Like they'd say they do it again and again and again,
We all
and
said yes.
we all said yes, if that's true.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
how, and part of being a conscious leader is like making people aware of that if it resonates, and them getting to say yes in actual, human time versus resisting the whole time and never realizing that every single moment is a gift and, part of the journey. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. Something that I've been playing with recently, that more than recently, over the past few years, is how to use our bodies to get to that understanding. So, not just allowing the messages of our bodies as the indicator light of something deeper going on, but actually using our bodies to embed new beliefs. So, using the power of understanding our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system and activating our parasympathetic nervous system to embed those new beliefs. And it's so fun when you start to recognize the power that you do have, not just in terms of our mindset and our thoughts and choosing our thoughts and reassessing our beliefs, but actually using our bodies to support us in embedding those new beliefs.
I love that. Do you have an example you could share for people on that?
Yeah. So using things like EFT tapping, emotional freedom tapping, that I know many of your audience probably knows about, or breath work, right? But actually guiding your body as a way, almost like from neurolinguistic programming, anchoring the idea of anchoring emotions onto objects, which I do all the time. I love jewelry and crystals and all kinds of things to anchor beliefs and emotions into, but using your body to help anchor. So a lot of tapping for me will help to do that. You know, when you're in a space where mindset just seems to be taking over, that story, that limiting belief is so strong, where you've just uncovered a new layer of recognition of that old story. And intellectually, you know the truth. Intellectually, you know that this perspective is faulty, but it feels so real in the moment. Using your body to remind yourself and to actively bring your nervous system back to a place of rest and calm so that it can receive that understanding, because really what's blocking us is being in that heightened stress state. And that's what anxiety does, or fear, right? It puts us back into that stress state. And that's where it's so hard when we feel that disconnect of, I know I'm worthy. I know I'm worthy. Why am I having so much trouble with this financial situation? Or I know that the money in my bank account has no indication of my worth or the value of this beautiful work that I'm bringing to this world. Why is this challenging me so much? Using our bodies to re-embed that deeper understanding.
I love that so much. Yeah. Recently, just even playing with it's, we get, hopefully our listeners at this point get that, our beliefs equal our reality. And,
100%.
and literally it's like I get to create any belief that I want to have about anything. Yes.
Isn't that incredible?
Yes. Like I have these types of clients that are so committed and so ready for this major transformation. I have this type of life and
Yes.
everything. Like, and it's just starting with the belief and then acting and being and doing and living as if that is here now and getting to watch it come.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just incredible. What's your experience or?
Yes, I'm yes, everything you just said and more. And
Mm-hmm.
recently the challenges for me has been, and for those of your audience members who are parents, it takes it to a whole new level, because now the stakes, at least in from my lived experience, feel really high, when we don't have control, and that sense of surrender and tucking into your own beliefs, creating your reality by understanding your deeper beliefs, and then watching it play out in your children is a whole new, deeper level for me. And that's really going back to a question that I think I didn't answer earlier. What I've been working on recently is really allowing for that, allowing for surrendering to letting them have their own lives and recognizing I don't get to control their future. I don't get to control the outcome here. And yet we can still hold the hope and the belief and the intention. And I love that you always say that at the beginning of every episode. What are the intentions here? Because I think that's our magic. We don't, although we don't have control, we never have to give up the intention. The intention is where the magic lies, but we can let go of the outcome. And when we do, the outcome is more often than not so much more wonderful than we could have anticipated, because we only know what we've experienced. But where true creation lives is in the unknown.
Mm.
True creativity and evolution and new insight, new growth lives in a part that we can't yet imagine. And if we're going to allow for that, we really have to let go of the control, not the intention, not the hope, not the optimism, not the dream, but definitely the outcome.
I love that so much. I just heard something recently, and this mom was talking about how, all she ever wanted was for her daughter to go to this college and, have this education. And her daughter came to her, in high school and said, I'm not going to college.
Yeah.
And, she was just crushed and had a level of
Yes.
self-awareness and did not let on to the daughter that she was feeling that way, did not get angry, but every single day she'd be in meditation and in prayer and just still see her right in that, situation, and just held that intention for her. And I can't remember how long, time passed. She might not have even, but she came around and said, actually, I am. And it was like better than she thought, and da da da. And it was like, got to be her daughter's own decision. And there wasn't any drama about, you know what I mean? And just like how beautiful, that can be when
So
you
cool.
can be that kind of type, of conscious parent. And again, any parents listening, don't go into shame and I messed my kids up, right? Just again, trust that you're hearing this now. And, there's always more time to keep looking at these things and to go after it now. So
yeah, beautiful.
This is such a rich conversation.
Oh my gosh, I could keep
Loving
going, Leslie.
I'm
Yes.
loving it. It's so high vibe and it's
So
making me
good.
so happy. We'll have to have you back sometime. But for everyone listening, definitely check out Dr. MacCarthy's stuff. I know you have a quiz. Would you mind sharing for people how they can find it and what that entails?
Yeah, absolutely. So this quiz, it's a happiness quiz specifically for doctors and dentists. So it's really, how happy are you really? And I love the quiz because it's just deeper insight into ourselves. And I think sometimes we tell ourselves stories that, don't allow us to see the truth about ourselves. So it's great. I love the quiz. And then the quiz also has some great suggestions and opportunity for deeper growth and understanding based on your results. So super exciting. Who doesn't love a quiz? But you can access it by either you can text the word happy to 207 600 2699. So that's 207. It's main area code 600-2699, or just visit my website, thebizofhappiness.com, biz of happiness.com. And I would invite any of your listeners who are in the healthcare professions to check in on the podcast, The Business of Happiness, because every week we come on with similar content that you do, but just from a healthcare perspective of how to have deeper understanding and personal development in our own selves and reach for happiness. Because I think you mentioned at the top of the hour, I believe that when we feel good, we can do good. And I love that you mentioned with the parenting, not to start shaming and guilting yourself, which is our go-to. We think, oh my gosh, my kid's 17 and I've been pushing her and raising her in XYZ. What have I done to her? But really, that just makes us feel worse about ourselves. And then we're put back into action of defense and fear. And when you feel great about yourself, when you give yourself permission to feel good, to offer self-compassion, offer grace, to shower that guilt with love, that's when we actually take beautiful, positive, empowering action in our lives. So I'm so grateful to you for having me on the show today, Leslie. This has been absolutely so much fun. I could talk to you all day.
I know. We'll have to keep the conversation going. I totally agree. And I'm grateful for the conversation too. I know people are probably, their heads are spinning in all sorts of transformational conversations. So thank you so much for being here. Thanks to everyone for listening. Definitely check out Dr. MacCarthy's quiz. Again, that's thebizofhappiness.com/quiz. Check her out for sure. And we'll see you for the next episode. Thank you so much. Bye. If you are serious about taking action on your struggle with food, body, and weight, then this is for you. Go ahead and text the word hypnosis to 855-BE-ALIVE. That's 855-232 5483. Immediately after texting that number, you will get access to our free training that will tell you why you can't figure the food, body, and weight thing out, why you can't keep weight off even after you've been successful in the past, and how to actually overcome it, including a mini hypnosis session at the end. Don't miss out. Text the word hypnosis to 855-BE-ALIVE. That's 855-232-5483.